Good morning, everyone. My name is Rod O'Connor, and I'm going to be your guide through this week's presentation of the Popdock suite for Dynamics GP. By way of housekeeping, I just have a couple of things. First, if you have any questions at any point, please don't hesitate to throw them in either the chat or the questions area of GoToWebinar. We do have a section at the end for questions, but I'd rather see them come in as you're thinking of them. Also, we'll be sending out a recording of the presentation afterwards, so please don't feel a need to frantically keep notes as we go. Before we start looking at products, it probably makes sense for us to understand what exactly the Popdock suite includes. So the first and most obvious one is Popdock. As you'll see later on in the demo, Popdock is basically smart list for everything that can be used outside of Dynamics GP. Also included in the Popdock suite is Smart List Builder. Now, Smart List Builder you may or may not be aware of, but that's a tool that allows us to create and modify smart lists within Dynamics GP. Finally, there's Smart View. Smart View is what Smart List should have been in the first place. Now, when it comes to the Popdock suite, and frankly, most of the products here at E1 Solutions, we have a number of design features that we like to make sure are included in every product. Now, the first pillar of our development, if you will, is that everything has to be user-driven. Now, what we mean by that is, as much as possible, we're taking the requirement for IT resources or developers out of the process. So we're trying to put as much power into the hands of the end user as we possibly can. The next thing is that everything's in real time. Now, while we can talk to something like a data warehouse, just in case you're asking, we don't require one. So basically, you're going to see that every time I click on refresh, I'm reaching directly into the data source and getting the answer right now. Next, we need everything to be interactive. Now, what we mean by that is we want to have things like go-tos. We want to have the ability to move columns around. We really want you to be able to ask questions of your data. The next kind of key pillar that we have is that we want the data to come from anywhere. Now, that's more applicable on the Popdock side where we've got 60 different connectors, but even within your Smart List Builder and your Smart View, you're seeing products from everywhere in GP. And finally, we want to be able to present that data anywhere. So when we talk about Smart View, you'll see that we have the ability to access Smart View from outside of Dynamics GP. And you'll see that in Popdock, we have the ability to embed Popdock in pretty much any system out there. We're going to go and take a look at each of the products included in the Popdock suite now, but before we do, I just wanted to point out I'm not going to be giving a full presentation on each of the products. I really just want you to understand what each of the products does and some of the really key features that apply for our conversation today. Each of the products that I'm about to cover has its own video or its own demo available to you, and I'll show you at the end of this how to get a hold of those. Since it was our first product that we put out, I thought I'd start with Smart List Builder. As I mentioned earlier, Smart List Builder allows users to create new smart lists or modify existing smart lists using all of the data available to them within their Dynamics GP environment. So to get to Smart List Builder, I'm going to go ahead and click on my menu up here. Now, one thing a lot of people don't know about Smart List Builder is that it's actually 3 different products blended together. There is Smart List Builder, which is what I'm going to be going through today, but it also includes Excel Report Builder and Navigation List Builder. Now, Excel Report Builder allows you to build refreshable Excel reports without having to know any code or anything like that. You can simply come in and with a Smart List Builder-like interface, build yourself a refreshable Excel report. Navigation lists are those parts of GP, not a lot of people actually know about these, which is a shame because they're really quite powerful. So when I come in and take a look for example, at this little menu item here on the left, this is a navigation list. So it allows me to do quite a bit of work. I can do things like build a new journal entry. It's just a good way to work with my data. Smart List Builder includes the ability to build new navigation lists or to update the navigation lists that are here to give you new fields and new functionality. As I mentioned though, we're going to dig through Smart List Builder itself just so that you can kind of get a good sense of what the features are like within it. All right, now I'm not going to build a new one from scratch. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up an existing smart list. All right, now the first thing to note here is if you notice over here on the left-hand side, we have the ability to pull in any of your tables from Dynamics GP. So when I click on this drop-down list, I can choose Dynamics GP table, and from here I can pull in any table within my environment. Now it's really important to define that word any. So in your Dynamics GP environment, you may have some modifications that you've built using Dexterity over the years. You may have ISV solutions that you've purchased over the years. All of those are listed here within my environment. So I can pick up any of my products from GP. I can then choose my series within it, choose which table from within that series, and then I can link it back to one of the other tables within my report. The other important part of this is, which may not be obvious to someone who hasn't seen the database, all of these table names are in plain English. So this is the account master filter 4 table. This is not the GL0010 whatever it is that would be at the back end or the database level. So when you're building these queries, you don't necessarily need to understand that gobbledygook naming convention that they have at the database level. You can see here we do have the ability to include SQL as well. So any table or view or script that you have inside of your Dynamics GP environment can be used as well. We also have the ability to create calculated fields. When I come up here and click on calculations, you can see that I have the ability to create any calculated field that I might need to create. If you notice up here, we have the ability to also create go-tos. Now, go-tos are what allow you to take your smart list and navigate to other parts of Dynamics GP, maybe even open up different smart lists. This is what really gives smart list its power and what makes it unique out there in the marketplace still today after 25 years of existing. There's nothing quite like SmartList out there on the market today. Now, when we come into these actions, you can see that we're creating no code solutions here. So I have the ability to, for example, open a particular window. I can click here to see which window we're going to be opening or what value we're going to set within that window. If I want to add columns to my list, I'm simply going to click on the display checkbox here, and now it's included in my list of fields when my user clicks on add new. Or if I want it to be part of my default list, I can click on this checkbox and make it part of the default. I can even reorder where that's going to appear within my default here by moving it up, for example. When I'm done making the changes to my smart list, I have the ability to save it, and now it's going to be deployed right away. There's nothing I have to do. I don't have to go client to client to get that deployed. It's just there in my smart list, and I can control it through existing Dynamics GP security. So I assign a task that has access to this new smart list or the smart list that I've already modified, and then I assign that task to a role, and now my users have access to it accordingly. There's a number of other features that allow you to get down into the nitty-gritty of building a smart list, but hopefully you get a sense of the flexibility and the simplicity here. Again, going back to those pillars that I talked about earlier, you can have an average user come in here and build a smart list from scratch. You can make those smart lists interactive. Smart lists are always in real time. All of those key pillars that we talked about earlier are available to you through Smart List Builder. Now, I know I said earlier how great smart lists are, and I truly believe that. In the marketplace today, like I said, I've worked with a lot of ERPs over the years, and there's really nothing like smart list out there that I've come across anywhere in the mid-market space. Now, with that said, it does have its own limitations. For example, I can only have up to 4 filter components. If I want to pivot the data in any way, shape, or form, I have to drop it out to Excel, which, by the way, takes a long time. There's just some real shortcomings within the experience of Smart List. So after Smart List Builder was produced, E1 Solutions put their heads together and came out with Smart View, which I like to say is what Smart List should have been all along. To get to Smart View, we're going to come up here and we're going to click on Smart View, shockingly enough. All right, now I'm going to maximize this on my screen. A couple of things that I like to point out straight off the bat are the interface differences. For example, one of the biggest complaints about Smart List is I don't get to control the real estate on the window. Whereas with a Smart View, I can come in here. I'm going to choose my sales line items, for example. I have the ability to do things like expand the different columns that I see on the sides. Right? So I can make them bigger if I'm not seeing all the words. I can make them smaller. As some of you may be aware, within Smart List today, to do that is actually a couple of mouse clicks. If I wanted to, I could even come up here to options. And if I know I'm on the right list that I want to work with, I don't have to look at that list section at all. I don't have to look at my list of columns. I can just work with the data and own the entire screen. So we've really designed it so that it's a little bit easier for you to use. If you notice as well, I've got my list of columns over here on the left-hand side, and now I've got a bunch of drag and drop, right? So I can drag allow back orders, for example, out into my list, and now it's one of my columns and immediately added and refreshed. Again, fewer mouse clicks. And by the way, did you notice how quickly that loaded? So when I come here and click on refresh, it's orders of magnitude quicker than the average smart list. There's many stories I've heard over the years of people who have that smart list where they come in the morning and they click on open it, or they click to open it. They'll go and they'll make their coffee, they'll chit chat with someone, they'll come back and they'll check to see if it's done yet. The reason for that is smart list itself is actually reading record by record. So if you have tens of thousands of records, it's going to take an awfully long time to load that. Whereas Smart View is doing it all at once, and it's actually pulling it in a much more efficient way. Now let's talk about filtering. I can come up here and click on edit filter, and I just like to get you past your GPTSD. And if you take a look, I've got as many filters as I want, but I've still got all that power. In fact, I've got more power with my operators because I can use things like, is not between. I've got is blank is an option, or is one of, where I can put a list of non-consecutive values, or say not one of. So I have the ability to be very thorough in what my queries are. I can also mix and match my ands and ors, so I can very quickly add a new group here if I wanted and make this an or instead of an and then I can go ahead and build that out. So from a query perspective, there's no more reason to go to IT and ask them to build you a SQL query because you need that fifth, that sixth, that 10th filter parameter. But I still have the ability to add my favorites, consume my favorites. You can see down here, I've got a couple of favorites. Another thing that we have, I mentioned earlier, if I want to pivot this data in any way, I have to drop it out to Excel first. Well, here I can do it right here on the screen. So I have the ability to group by my items, and you can see I'm getting subtotals by my columns, which, by the way, I can move around if I really want to. So if I want my unit cost over here next to my quantity, I'm going to simply drag that around. Again, trying to make this as easy as possible. You want grouped by customer within the item number? No worries, just drag it up here, and now I've got a report within each item which customers are buying it and which transactions did that show up on. If I wanted to expand or collapse everything, obviously I've got that up here. Again, the whole purpose here is to make this as interactive as possible. Now, we've also improved, in my opinion, the go-to menus. No more right clicking. I can simply come up here. I can pick, any of the transactions that I'm wanting to look at here, so I can choose that one, and I can quickly pop out to my customer maintenance, same way as I always did. I just feel it's laid out a little bit better for me, to my mind. One other major thing that Smart View takes care of is accessing my data from outside of Dynamics GP. So if I close this window now, and I'm going to drop down to my desktop, I have this Smart View icon here. Now this allows users within my network to access smart lists using their Windows ID. All right, now everything I showed you from before, my sales line items, for example, my ability to have favorites, my ability to drag and drop and group on the fly, all of that exists. I've got all of my columns over here on the right-hand side. Again, I can drag those in as I want to. I've got all of my filters available. Again, none of that GPTSD here. All of the features I showed you are available here. The only one that's not available from outside of GP would be your go-tos, because go-tos rely on access to GP, whereas now I'm sitting outside of my GP environment. So if you do have those users out there who currently have GP access for the sole purpose of checking smart lists, well, now they don't have to. Now you can give them that Smart View and allow them to sit outside of your Dynamics GP. The last product for us to talk about is Popdock. Now, Popdock is really the evolution of Smart List and Smart List Builder, if you will. So this allows us to take all of the benefits of Smart List Builder, all of the benefits of Smart View, and start applying them to all of the other applications within our environment. A demo of Popdock on its own could take a very long time. I'm going to go through some key features, show you why we feel it's the evolution of Smart List Builder and Smart View. However, I do encourage you to attend one of our full demos of Popdock, just so that you can really see everything that it has to offer. Popdock is a cloud-based application, as you can see. Through the Popdock portal, I have access to a lot of different types of data. But let me start by just looking at a list first. So very much like Smart View that I showed you before, I have the ability to drag and drop columns around. I have the ability to group based on something like a city. I have the ability to filter my data. So when I come in here, and again, no restriction on how many we can have. We can mix and match our ands and our ors, so we can really make our queries sing here. Now I'm looking at GP data. This is a GP customers list. I have the ability to add and remove columns. I have the ability to save my favorites, all those cool features that I really like. But I've actually got some new stuff too that we've picked up over the years. First of all, every single list is multi-company by default. So I don't have to drop out to SQL and create a SQL view to have my list be multi-company in nature. All I have to do is add the list to Popdock. I'll show you that in a little bit. 0 lines of code to make that work. Now let me get back to my single list here. And every time you see Skippy skipping there, Skippy is reaching into whatever your data source is and picking up the data in real time. I again have the ability to export because every accountant likes to have everything in Excel no matter what. Now, what we did is we took that concept of go-tos and we broke it out into 2 different concepts. So the first concept I'm going to show you now is called details and another is called actions. Details are all these little carrots that you see around the outside with the words next to them. For example, I can take a look at my sales orders for a particular customer. Or I can take a look at my receivables transactions for this customer. And this should make sense to you. I'm pulling ERP data related to my ERP customers. But details allow us to start to pull data from other systems as well. So I told you before, this is our Smart View and Smart List Builder for everything. So now I can take a look here and I can see opportunities coming from my CRM. And if I change customers, you'll see that I'll get different opportunities. This is a context sensitive thing. Now, it's not just about ERP and CRM. Here I can pull support tickets. This is an online REST-based help desk solution that allows me to look at support tickets for this customer. And if I take a look, for example, at Ulta Manufacturing, I've got a different ticket that I'm pulling in. I can also reach out to the internet and use an internet API. So in this case, I'm reaching out to Google Maps, but think weather network or think automotive parts supplier or any other web-based API where I can pass in a parameter and get back a result. So if you think about between this list and its details, I've got data coming from 1, 2, 3, 4 different places all in one single list. That's putting all of the information that my users require in a single spot. Now, if you remember from that slide I was showing a minute ago before when we started talking about Popdock, I told you that Popdock was Smart View and Smart List Builder for everything, everywhere, all at once. I'm showing you everything, and I'm showing you all at once. We've got data coming from many systems, all in a single list, and I can do this mixing and matching whatever systems I work with. We're going to go through the list in a minute of available connectors, but pretty much everything in my infrastructure can be in a single spot at any given time. But I haven't talked to you about everywhere. Everywhere is somewhat covered by the Popdock portal, so I can access my lists. And again, this is GP data that I'm exposing through the internet. So unlike the Smart View client where I had to be inside the network, now I can go literally anywhere where there's an internet connection and have access to this data as I need it. I can question that data. I can see the details wherever I am. But there's more to everywhere. Let me jump out to my SharePoint environment here. Now, if you notice, Skippy is skipping there in the middle of the screen, and here I've got Popdock embedded inside of a SharePoint page. This took 0 lines of code for me to embed, but it's that exact same list that I had before. And it's not just the data that we're embedding here, it's all the functionality. I can filter the data, I can have favorites, I can look at data from other solutions through my details. I have the ability to filter, I can export. All of those cool things that I showed you inside of Popdock are now available in SharePoint. And it's not just SharePoint, it's pretty much anywhere that can accept an iframe is really a good rule of thumb. So think SharePoint, think Salesforce, think Teams, we can embed them in Teams, lots of online portals. We can really embed these widgets pretty much anywhere. It's a really cool feature. So as far as being the evolution of SmartView goes, I think I've really shown you that my end user experience. We're going to go through the portal or we're going to access it through widgets. Now let's take a look at the Smart List Builder type functionality. So I'm going to jump over to Popdock again, and this time I'm going to go through my hamburger menu and talk about connectors. I'm going to click on Add Connector just to show you that we do have about 60 connectors out of the box. We've got many, many things. Obviously, Dynamics GP is one of those things right here, but we've also got lots of online ERPs. We've got all the online CRMs. And if you notice, it goes even beyond that ERP CRM line of business app. Think about things like MailChimp or GitHub or HubSpot, other solutions you might have. We can deal with online stores. We've also got these two right here. So if I have a REST API, which really covers pretty much any of my online applications, about 90% of them right now have some form of REST API that we should be able to talk to. That means that can become a Popdock list. I've also got SQL Server available to me as a custom connection. So if you've been on GP probably for about more than a month, I'd say, you've probably got custom tables out there, maybe even a custom database of your own. Perhaps you've got an in-house built application for billing or project management or something along those lines. We can connect to all of those too and get all of that data out there into Popdock. I'm going to quickly take a look at our GP connector so I can show you some of the features available to you. Now, everything about a Popdock connection is customizable by you. So right down to the name, anytime I see a flashy cursor or a drop-down list, that's a value that I'm able to change. Everything with us starts with a list. So I can come in here. We're going to give you about 95 lists out of the box with your GP connector. That number of lists will change depending what the connector is. But I have the ability to go into any of these lists and again, customize them. So I can add whatever fields I need. So if I want to click on add field, for example, it'll show me any fields that haven't been added yet, and that will make them available. If I want to create a calculated field, I can come in here and again, do whatever it is that I need to do to get that calculated field in there. We have two different languages. Don't worry if you don't know SQL, even though you've been using it up until now in Smart List Builder. You can use Popdock script, which is very, very similar to Excel formulas. Most accountants picked that up quicker than I did. All right. We also have the ability, obviously, to manage our default fields. We can add any field we want as a default. We can move our fields around. We can add restrictions to our list. So this would allow us to, for example, show a list of GL transactions, but exclude the payroll accounts. That way nobody can see data that they shouldn't see. And those restrictions can actually be based on users or teams. So a different team would have, for example, the HR team would see the payroll accounts. Maybe the finance team would see it. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, sales, none of those folks would see it based on whatever rules you set up in here. We have the ability to add those details, and I like to go into a detail just to show you there's no code. I'm just making choices. So I just drop down here and choose what type of record I want. I'm going to choose what are the filters that are in place to make that detail contextual with my parent list. I'm going to choose what fields I want to show in there. And that's it. I make a few choices, and within minutes I can have this really powerful detail and look like a hero to my end users. So again, hopefully you're getting a sense of the flexibility and the ease of use here that goes with this. Now, with the lists, we can add new base lists as well. So you actually have the ability to add any smart list from your environment. So all of those smart lists that you may have built to date, they're not for nothing. You can actually import those as Popdock lists and now expose those to users throughout your organization. We can also pull in SQL tables and views from either the system database or the company database. Now, do you remember when I said earlier that all of our lists are multi-company by default? All I have to do is choose which table or view I want and click this box, and that means now that view is going to be available for all my companies. I didn't have to create that SQL view I used to have to create. There's one more type of list that we can create here. Now, these are our custom lists. And the cool thing about custom lists is that the data can actually come from multiple places. So I've got a join list, which is the same as any other reporting tool. I've got a merge list, which is going to bring data together from two or more lists and put them into a single list. So we're not going to go through all of these different types of lists, but I do want to show you this is a no-code solution. So here I'm combining GP and CRM data into a single list using a join, and all I'm doing is making choices. I chose which lists I'm going to be merging. I chose the fields that are going to be on here. I added in a restriction here for my data. So all of this combined, again, I can start mixing and matching data from across my organization. So I can combine my payroll system with my general ledger if I wanted to. So that's all of the big rocks that I wanted to show you from a Popdock perspective. However, again, I'm going to encourage you to attend a full Popdock demo because there is a lot of features in here that we could be showing you that we just won't have time for on the call today. However, I do have a couple of features that I want to show you with respect to Popdock that really are future-proofing your investment in Smart List Builder, in SmartView, frankly, in the Popdock suite. There's a lot of hullabaloo with Microsoft right now, with GP and its longevity and all of that stuff. A lot of folks are considering what happens next. So what's happening after GP? If you're not in that situation, that's perfectly fine. We're not saying you should be in that situation. However, a lot of folks are there. You're hearing it from your partners. You're hearing it from Microsoft. It's all over the place. We're here to help you if you choose to make that transition to something else. The way Popdock fits into this and how we're future-proofing your investment here. First of all, we've got connectors for many of the ERPs on the market today. So Business Central is obviously the one that a lot of Microsoft partners and Microsoft themselves are pushing a lot of GP customers towards. That's a connection we have out of the box. But we've also got Finance and Operations, Microsoft's other personal favorite. Even outside the Microsoft channel, we can deal with Acumatica, we can deal with NetSuite. Most of the ERP applications that are out there today, we can talk to. The ability to combine data from historical solutions and new. So using those custom lists that I talked about a little while ago, I can actually combine historical data with ongoing data. So if I want a life-to-date sales report without the expense or complexity of trying to import all of that history into my new ERP, I can do that. And it's actually pretty easy. I can then actually embed those lists inside of my new system so that if I'm in Business Central, I can be on the customer window and still see my life-to-date sales report. And then finally, if you do need a place to store that historical data, we can actually help you get it out to an Azure Data Lake. And we have a full webinar just on that feature alone. So please do feel free to check that out. That's out there on our YouTube channel. All right, so that brings us to the end of the session for today. I do want to thank you all for attending. For more information, you can swing by popdock.com. We've got lots of information out there about Popdock and about the Popdock suite in general. You can also email us at sales@e1solutions.com if you have some specific questions about your situation. Now, we've been trying to answer your questions in the chat as we've been going through, so hopefully you've all gotten the answers you wanted, but there is one that I wanted to raise here before I sign off. The question was, is Popdock replacing Smart List Builder? So basically, is Smart List Builder going away? And emphatically, that is not the case. So we do feel that Popdock is the next step in the evolution of Smart List. We feel that it brings a lot to the table, but by no means is it replacing SmartView or Smart List Builder. There is still a case for using those inside of Dynamics GP, but we wanted to expose you to Popdock so that you're aware that there's a lot more functionality that you can use now. And like I said in that last slide, really future-proof your investment in Smart List and Smart List Builder. All right, well, thanks again, everybody, for attending, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.